Captain Lee Min-ho stood at the large window of his office, watching 3 alien ships move slowly through space near his planet. The ships belonged to the Kaltharan Empire, and they came by every few weeks to check on the human colony of Havens. Rest. Their metal hulls caught the light from the nearby star, making them look like silver fish swimming through the dark ocean of space. To the alien scouts inside those ships, Havens Rest looked like any other quiet farming world. They could see huge fields of golden wheat stretching across the planet's surface, small mining machines digging for basic metals, and peaceful towns where humans went about their daily lives. The aliens saw exactly what Min-ho wanted them to see, a simple colony that posed no threat to anyone. But if those alien scouts could look deeper, they would discover something that would terrify the entire empire. Far below the peaceful farms, buried deep under tons of rock and soil, Chief Engineer Park So-young walked through the largest construction facility in human space. The underground shipyard was massive, so big that entire city blocks could fit inside just one section. Special machines hummed quietly in the walls, creating invisible shields that hid all the energy and heat from the alien sensors above. So-young had spent the last 15 years of her life in these tunnels, watching something incredible take shape. Thousands of workers moved through the construction bays like busy ants, each person knowing exactly what their job was. They welded massive metal plates, installed complex computer systems, and assembled weapons that no alien race had ever seen before. The project had been going on for 37 years, longer than So-young had been alive. Her own father had worked in these same tunnels when she was just a child playing in the farms above. 3 generations of humans had kept this secret, passing it down like a family treasure that could never be shared with outsiders. Communications Officer Kim Jae-min sat at his desk, watching green numbers flow across multiple computer screens. Each screen showed different information about the alien patrol ships, their speed, their direction, what kind of sensors they were using. Jae-min had learned to read alien technology better than most aliens could themselves. "The patrol ships are moving away from the planet," he reported to Captain Min-ho through his communication device. "Their scans didn't pick up anything unusual. They think we're still just a boring farming world." Min-ho allowed himself a small smile. The aliens were smart, but they had made one crucial mistake. They thought that because humans seemed weak and peaceful, they actually were weak and peaceful. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for so long that they couldn't imagine any species being clever enough to hide their true strength. Down in the construction bay, So-young placed her hand on a massive metal wall that stretched up into the darkness above her head. This wall was part of something that would soon change everything. The aliens had no idea that humans had been learning from them, studying their technology, and building something far more advanced than anything the Empire had ever created. The deception had worked perfectly for decades. Every time alien inspectors visited human worlds, they saw farmers and miners and small towns. They never thought to look deeper, never suspected that humanity had been preparing for the day when they would no longer bow down to alien masters. Min-ho knew that day was coming soon. Very soon, the galaxy would learn what humans were really capable of when they stopped pretending to be harmless. Imperial Overlord Vextar walked slowly around the massive holographic map that filled the center of his command room. The map showed the entire outer edge of the galaxy, where hundreds of tiny blue dots represented human colonies. Each dot pulsed gently like a heartbeat, showing that people lived and worked on those distant worlds. For over 200 years, these human settlements had existed under what the Empire called protection. The humans paid taxes, followed Empire laws, and in return, the Empire promised to keep them safe from pirates and other dangers. It had been a comfortable arrangement for everyone involved, or so Vextar had always believed, but lately, reports had been reaching the Empire's capital about humans getting too independent. Some colonies had started building their own defense systems without asking permission. Others had begun trading with species the Empire didn't approve of. Worst of all, a few human worlds had actually refused direct orders from Imperial governors. Vextar's 6 eyes narrowed as he studied the map. These humans needed to be reminded of their place in the galaxy. They had grown too comfortable, too confident. It was time to show them who really ruled the stars. "Commander Zeklon," he called to his assistant, a tall alien with purple skin and 4 arms. "Send the same message to every human world. They have 30 days to tear down all their weapons and defense systems. After that, we take direct control of their governments. No more of this pretending they can govern themselves." The commander bowed his head. "And if any of them refuse, sir?" Vextar's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile on his reptilian face. "Then we make an example of them that the rest of the galaxy will never forget." Meanwhile, billions of miles away on Haven's Rest, Colonial Administrator Choi Ji-hoon stood in the emergency meeting room reading the Empire's message aloud. His voice was steady, but everyone could hear the anger underneath his calm words. Around the room, large screens showed the faces of representatives from other human colonies, each person looking more worried than the last. The message was clear and brutal. Surrender everything that could be used for defense, or face the consequences. No negotiation, no compromise. Just complete submission or total destruction. Dr. Yang Hye-jin, the colony's chief scientist, spoke up from her station near the back of the room. "I've been monitoring communications from other human worlds. Most of them are already doing what the Empire demands. The colony on New Terra has started taking apart their orbital defense platforms. The mining world of Kepler-7 is grounding all their patrol ships." The faces on the screens showed the same story. Fear was spreading through human space like a disease. One by one, the colonies that had taken generations to build were dismantling their defenses and preparing to become nothing more than prisoners on their own worlds. Ji-hoon looked across the room to where Captain Min-ho sat in the shadows. The military commander had been unusually quiet during the entire meeting, just listening and thinking. His weathered face showed no expression, but Ji-hoon had worked with him long enough to know that the old soldier was making calculations in his head. The room fell silent as everyone waited for Min-ho to speak. These people had trusted him to keep their families safe for over 20 years. Now they needed to know what he planned to do about the Empire's ultimatum. Min-ho stood up, slowly, his chair creaking in the quiet room. He looked at each face on the screens, then at the people sitting around the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but filled with determination. "Send our response to the Empire," he said simply. "Tell them we respectfully decline their generous offer." The silence that followed was deafening. The space around Haven's Rest had been peaceful and quiet for decades. Then, in a single moment, everything changed. A massive tear appeared in the fabric of space itself, and Admiral Vextar's flagship Dominion burst through like a metal whale breaking the surface of an ocean. The ship was enormous, over 3 kilometers long and bristling with enough weapons to destroy entire cities. But Vextar hadn't come alone. One by one, 200 more Imperial warships followed the Dominion through the hyperspace portal. They arranged themselves in perfect battle formation, creating a wall of metal and firepower that stretched across the star system. Each ship was a masterpiece of alien engineering, designed for one purpose: to make anyone who saw them surrender immediately. On the bridge of the Dominion, Admiral Vextar stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the small blue-green planet that had dared to defy the Empire. His reptilian features showed nothing but confidence and contempt. This wouldn't take long. Though a show of force this massive had never failed to bring rebellious colonies to their knees. The Admiral had commanded fleets for over 50 years. He had conquered dozens of worlds and crushed countless rebellions. In his experience, most species would rather surrender than watch their families die in a hopeless fight against superior numbers. "Sir, we're getting a message from the planet," announced his communications officer, a young alien with bright yellow skin and large black eyes. Vextar nodded approvingly. The humans had seen his fleet and were ready to beg for mercy. This would be over before it even began. "Put their transmission through to the main speakers. Let the entire bridge crew hear how quickly these brave humans changed their tune." The bridge fell silent as the communication channel opened. Everyone expected to hear crying, pleading, or desperate offers of surrender. Instead, a calm human voice filled the command center, speaking with the kind of quiet confidence that made Vextar's skin crawl. "Imperial fleet, you are not welcome in this system. We strongly advise you to turn around and leave immediately." For a moment, nobody on the bridge moved. The communications officer stared at his equipment as if it had malfunctioned. The weapons officers looked at each other in confusion. Even the Admiral's personal guards seemed stunned by what they had just heard. Then Vextar began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle deep in his throat, but quickly grew into the kind of harsh, barking laughter that echoed off the metal walls of the command center. The other aliens on the bridge relaxed and began smiling. Their admiral was amused rather than angry, which meant the humans were about to learn a very painful lesson. "These farming humans have certainly grown bold," Vextar said, wiping tears from his 6 eyes. "They see 200 of our best warships and still think they can make demands. Prepare the orbital bombardment systems. We'll start by destroying their capital city and see how long their courage lasts after that." But before his weapons officer could follow the order, the sensor operator suddenly jumped up from his station, his face pale with shock and confusion. "Admiral! Something's happening on the planet's surface. I'm reading a massive energy signature. Bigger than anything in our databases. Something enormous is launching from the surface." Vextar spun around to look at the main view screen, expecting to see some kind of desperate missile attack or perhaps an old cargo ship converted into a bomb. What he saw instead made his blood freeze in his veins. Something was rising through Haven's Rest's atmosphere, but it wasn't a missile or a converted civilian ship. It was massive beyond belief, its hull gleaming like polished mirror as it broke through the cloud layer and continued climbing toward the stars. The massive ship continued rising through Haven's Rest's atmosphere like a metal mountain coming to life. What had seemed impossible from a distance became even more shocking as it fully cleared the planet's protective air layer and entered open space. The vessel was so large that it cast shadows across entire continents below, blocking out the sun for millions of people on the surface. The TCS Defiance moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so enormous. Most ships of even half this size would shake and struggle just to escape a planet's gravity. But the Defiance rose smoothly and steadily, its advanced engines barely visible as tiny points of blue light along its massive hull. At nearly 15 kilometers from front to back, the Supercarrier dwarfed every ship in Admiral Vextar's fleet. The Imperial dreadnoughts that had seemed so intimidating just moments before now looked like small escort ships next to this human monster. Even the Admiral's flagship, the pride of the Imperial Navy, appeared to be nothing more than a tiny metal toy floating in space. But the ship's size wasn't the most frightening thing about it. As the Defiance fully emerged into space, its hull began to reveal details that made seasoned Imperial officers question their own eyes. Weapon systems of unknown design covered every surface, some small and precise, others massive enough to destroy entire space stations with a single shot. Strange energy patterns flickered along the ship's armor, suggesting defensive systems that Imperial science had never even imagined. Along the sides of the great vessel, huge hangar doors began sliding open with mechanical precision. From these openings, wave after wave of sleek human fighter craft poured out like angry insects from a disturbed hive. These weren't the crude, boxy fighters that Imperial intelligence had seen in previous encounters with human colonies. These ships moved with fluid grace, their hulls reflecting an advanced technology that seemed decades ahead of anything humans were supposed to possess. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Kang Yu-jin stood calmly at the center of organized chaos. Her uniform was unlike anything the Imperial forces had seen before, dark blue with silver trim and insignia that belonged to something called the Terran Defense Force. The Empire's vast intelligence networks had never heard of this organization, which should have been impossible given their surveillance of human space. Around Captain Yu-jin, her bridge crew worked with the smooth efficiency of people who had trained together for years. Every person knew exactly what their job was and how to do it perfectly. Their movements were precise and confident, showing none of the panic or confusion that usually marked a colony's first encounter with Imperial military might. Wing Commander Nam Tai-hyun stood at his tactical station, watching dozens of screens. That showed the positions of every fighter craft, streaming from the Defiance's hangar bays. All squadrons have launched successfully, Captain. Fighter wings are moving into defensive positions around the ship. Enemy targeting systems are being jammed by our electronic warfare craft. At the weapons control station, Gunnery Chief SEO, Junji's fingers danced across controls that managed firepower beyond Imperial comprehension. All weapon systems are online and ready, Captain. Our targeting computers have locked onto the Imperial formation. We can engage multiple targets simultaneously across their entire fleet. Captain Yujin nodded slowly, her face showing the calm determination of someone who had prepared for this moment her entire career. She turned to her communications officer and gave a simple command that would change the course of Galactic history. Open a direct channel to Admiral Vextar's flagship. Her voice, when it reached the Imperial fleet, carried the quiet authority of someone who held absolute power and wasn't afraid to use it. Admiral Vextar, this is Captain Kang Yujin of the Terran colonial ship Defiance. You have exactly 10 minutes to remove your fleet from this system before we consider your continued presence an act of war against the human colonies. Deep inside the Imperial Intelligence headquarters on the capital world, Analyst Zekmor sat hunched over his workstation, staring at data that made no sense. His 4 yellow eyes moved rapidly across multiple screens, each one showing information about the massive human ship that had appeared at Haven's Rest. The more he studied the readings, the more confused and frightened he became. Zekmor had been analyzing alien technology for 30 years. He had studied the weapons and ships of hundreds of different species across the galaxy. He knew what primitive looked like, and he knew what advanced looked like. What he was seeing from the humans didn't fit into either category. It was something entirely new. The ship's outer hull showed construction techniques that shouldn't have been possible. The metal itself was arranged at the molecular level, in patterns that created armor stronger than anything the Empire had ever built. But that wasn't the strangest part. According to his instruments, the armor was somehow locked together using quantum physics. The same mysterious forces that held atoms together were being used to make the ship's protective shell nearly indestructible. Director Mordak, Zekmor called across the intelligence center to his superior, a massive alien with green skin and tentacles instead of arms. You need to see these weapon readings from the human vessel. Director Mordak glided over to Zekmor's station, his tentacles twitching with curiosity. As the head of Imperial Intelligence, he had seen technology from every corner of the galaxy. Very little surprised him anymore. "What am I looking at?" Mordak asked, studying the complex energy patterns on the screen. "According to our sensors, the human ship's main weapons don't just shoot energy or projectiles," Zekmor explained, his voice shaking slightly. "They somehow manipulate gravity itself. They can make objects heavier or lighter, create artificial black holes, or even bend space around their targets. It's like they've learned to use the fundamental forces of the universe as weapons." Mordak's tentacles stopped moving completely. In all his years of intelligence work, he had never encountered anything like this. The Empire's own scientists had theorized about such weapons, but had dismissed them as impossible to build with current technology. "How did they develop this?" he demanded. "Our surveillance of human space shows nothing but farming worlds and simple mining operations." Zekmor pulled up another set of files on his computer. "That's where it gets really interesting, sir. I've been digging through our captured human databases, and I found research papers by someone named Dr. Yoon Seri. She's been working on theoretical physics for decades, the kind of advanced mathematics that most of our own scientists thought was just fantasy. The files showed years of research into quantum mechanics, gravitational manipulation, and something called dimensional folding. Most of the work had been dismissed by Imperial scientists as impossible daydreaming, but somehow Dr. Yoon and her team had made it all work. "Look at this timeline," Zekmor continued, bringing up a new display. "Based on the construction materials and energy signatures, they've been building this ship for at least 50 years, maybe longer. This wasn't some desperate response to our ultimatum. They've been planning this confrontation since before I was even born. The implications hit both aliens like a physical blow. For 5 decades, While the Empire had been treating humans like simple farmers and miners, they had actually been developing the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Every patrol that had visited human space, every intelligence report that had dismissed them as harmless, it had all been carefully orchestrated deception. Director Mordak's skin turned a darker shade of green, which in his species indicated extreme stress. If they can hide something this massive, this advanced, what else don't we know about them? How many other ships like this do they have? What other technologies have they developed in secret? The questions hung in the air like a dark cloud. For the first time in centuries, the Empire faced an enemy they didn't understand, using weapons they couldn't explain, following plans they couldn't predict, and that terrified them more than any military defeat ever could. Admiral Vextar stared at the massive human ship floating in space before his fleet, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes were showing him. For over 50 years, he had conquered worlds and crushed rebellions. Never once had a colony dared to challenge the Imperial Navy with anything more threatening than converted cargo ships and mining equipment. But this was different. This was impossible. The 10-minute deadline that the human captain had given him was almost up, and Vextar found himself facing a choice that no Imperial admiral had ever confronted before. He could retreat and admit that a single human colony had frightened away the Empire's Third Fleet, or he could attack and prove that Imperial military might was still supreme in the galaxy. Pride made the decision for him. "All ships, open fire," Vextar commanded, his voice echoing across the communication channels that connected his 200 warships. "Show these farming humans what happens when they challenge the Empire." The space around Haven's Rest erupted into a light show of devastating beauty. Hundreds of energy weapons fired simultaneously, creating streams of deadly plasma that crossed the darkness between the fleets. Imperial missiles streaked toward their target, each one carrying enough explosive power to level a city. The coordinated attack was magnificent and terrible, the kind of display that had brought dozens of species to their knees. For exactly 12 seconds, it looked like the battle would be over quickly. Then the human fighters struck back. Commander Huang Do-young sat in the cockpit of his fighter craft, watching his tactical display as it showed the positions of every ship in both fleets. Unlike the Imperial pilots who had to rely on radio communications and visual contact, Do-young and his squadron were connected through something far more advanced. Their ship's computers were linked together through quantum entanglement, allowing them to share information faster than the speed of light. When Do-young decided to attack the Imperial fleet's left flank, every pilot in his squadron knew about it instantly. When his wingman spotted a weakness in an enemy ship's defenses, that information appeared on Do-young's screen before the wingman could even speak. They moved together like parts of a single organism, each fighter covering the others with precise timing that seemed almost supernatural. The Imperial pilots had never faced anything like it. Their point defense systems, designed to shoot down individual attacking fighters, couldn't handle the perfectly coordinated assault that hit them from multiple directions at exactly the same moment. Within minutes, entire squadrons of Imperial fighters were being destroyed by human pilots who seemed to predict their every move. But the real shock came when the Defiance itself joined the battle. Captain Yu-jin sat calmly in her command chair, watching the tactical display that showed the enemy fleet spread out before her ship. She had trained for this moment for 20 years, studying Imperial tactics and technology, learning their weaknesses, and planning how to exploit them. "Gunnery Chief Seo, you may fire when ready," she said quietly. The Defiance's main weapons were unlike anything that had ever been built before, powered by contained antimatter reactions that generated more energy than most planets used in a year. The particle beam arrays could focus that power into streams of pure destruction that moved at nearly the speed of light. When they fired, the results were immediate and absolute. The first beam struck an Imperial cruiser amidships, and the entire vessel simply vanished in a flash of light. The second beam cut through a battleship from bow to stern, leaving nothing but glowing debris. One by one, Imperial warships that had seemed invincible just moments before were being erased from existence by weapons that turned matter itself into energy. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Vextar watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by a single human ship. Half his vessels were already gone, and the remainder were badly damaged. His communications officer reported that several ship captains were requesting permission to retreat. Admiral Vextar is signaling a general withdrawal, reported Lieutenant Park Minwoo from his station on the Defiance. Captain Yujin nodded slowly. Let them go. They've learned what they came here to learn. Within 3 hours, the mighty Third Fleet was fleeing the Haven's rest system in complete disorder, leaving behind wreckage and the shattered remains of Imperial pride. The space station, orbiting the human world of New Singapore, looked like any other trading post in the galaxy. Merchant ships from dozens of species docked at its ports, loading and unloading cargo while their crews enjoyed brief shore leave. To casual observers, it was simply another hub of peaceful commerce in the Outer Rim territories, but Spymaster Krelnox wasn't a casual observer. The reptilian operative had spent 40 years perfecting the art of invisibility. His personal cloaking device bent light around his body, making him completely invisible to both human eyes and their electronic sensors. He moved through the station's corridors like a ghost, listening to conversations and accessing computer terminals without anyone knowing he was there. Krelnox had been sent by the Empire's highest authorities to discover the truth about humanity's secret weapons. The destruction of Admiral Vextar's fleet had sent shockwaves through the Imperial capital, and the leadership needed answers. How had a simple farming colony built a ship that could defeat 200 Imperial warships? Where had they gotten the technology? Most importantly, did they have more ships like the Defiance? What the Spymaster discovered over the following weeks made his cold blood run even colder. Hidden deep within the station's computer networks, protected by encryption that had taken him days to crack, Krelnox found files that revealed the scope of humanity's deception. The Defiance wasn't a unique weapon built by one rebellious colony. It was just the first of many identical ships being constructed across human space. The files contained shipping manifests, construction schedules, and communication records that painted a picture of coordination on an unimaginable scale. For over 50 years, human colonies had been secretly working together on a project that spanned dozens of star systems. Each world had been assigned specific tasks, creating components that would eventually be assembled into humanity's hidden fleet. On the mining world of New Kyoto, plant manager Oh Sung-ho oversaw factories that produced the massive engines needed to move ships the size of small cities. His workers labored in underground facilities carved out of solid rock, hidden beneath what appeared to be ordinary asteroid mining operations. The engines they built were so advanced that they could accelerate vessels weighing millions of tons to speeds that defied Imperial understanding of physics. Krelnox's investigation led him to intercept communications between Oh Sung-ho and other facility managers across human space. The conversations were casual and friendly, but they revealed a network of production that boggled the mind. Oh's facility alone had produced engines for 12 different ships over the past decade, each engine more advanced than anything in the Imperial fleet. On the agricultural world of Terra Verde, shipwright Lim Ji-young supervised the construction of armor plating that made Imperial weapons look like toys. Her facilities were hidden beneath vast wheat fields, disguised as grain storage silos and processing plants. The armor she produced used the same quantum-locked molecular structures that had baffled Imperial scientists, creating protective barriers that could absorb direct hits from plasma cannons without showing even a scratch. But it wasn't just the advanced technology that shocked Krelnox, it was the sheer scale of human cooperation. The species that the Empire had dismissed as scattered and disorganized had actually created the most sophisticated military-industrial complex in galactic history. Each colony specialized in different components, sharing resources and expertise across vast distances through hidden communication networks. The humans had turned what the Empire saw as their greatest weakness, being spread across hundreds of worlds, into their greatest strength. If Imperial forces attacked one production facility, dozens of others could continue working. If they destroyed one communication hub, backup systems would automatically take over. The entire network was designed to be nearly impossible to cripple. through conventional military strikes. Krellnox realized that while the Empire had been treating humans like simple farmers and miners, they had actually been building the most advanced space fleet in the galaxy. Every patrol ship that had visited human worlds, every intelligence report that had dismissed them as harmless, had been part of a deception that had lasted for generations. The Spy Master's final report to Imperial headquarters contained a single, terrifying conclusion. Humanity wasn't just hiding one supercarrier. They were hiding an entire ghost fleet, and no one knew how many ships they had already completed. The Grand Hall of the Imperial Senate had seen many shocking revelations over the centuries, but nothing had prepared the assembled leaders for what Intelligence Director Mordak was about to tell them. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a bizarre rainbow of colors and shapes. All of them had come to hear the truth about humanity's secret weapons. Mordak stood at the center of the hall, his green tentacles trembling slightly as he prepared to deliver news that would change the course of galactic history. Behind him, enormous holographic displays began showing images that made the assembled senators gasp in disbelief. The first image showed a map of human space, but not the simple collection of farming worlds that Imperial records had always indicated. Instead, the display revealed a complex web of hidden connections linking every human colony. Lines of light connected world to world, showing communication networks, resource-sharing agreements, and manufacturing partnerships that had operated in complete secrecy for generations. "Honorable Senators," Mordak began, his voice carrying clearly through the massive chamber, "what you are seeing is the greatest deception in galactic history. For over 2 centuries, we have believed that humanity was a scattered, disorganized species, barely capable of governing their own worlds. We were wrong." The next image showed underground facilities on dozens of human worlds, each one hidden beneath what appeared to be innocent civilian infrastructure. Mining operations that were actually weapons factories, agricultural processing plants that were really shipyards, communication arrays disguised as weather monitoring stations. The humans have turned their entire colonial network into a single distributed military production system, Mordak continued. Each world specializes in different components, but they all work together toward the same goal, building a fleet capable of challenging Imperial supremacy. A murmur of unease rippled through the assembled senators. Many of them represented species that had been conquered by the Empire decades or centuries ago. The idea that any species could hide such advanced capabilities for so long was deeply disturbing. The holographic display changed again, this time showing the organizational structure of humanity's secret military force. At the top of the chart was a name that appeared in Imperial databases as nothing more than a minor colonial administrator, Admiral Ko Sung-min. This human coordinates fleet operations from a mobile command station that our intelligence services have never been able to locate, Mordak explained. He moves constantly between human worlds, using civilian transport ships and fake identities to avoid detection. Under his command, the humans have created a military force that operates entirely outside our surveillance networks. The display showed another name, Chief Designer Ryu Haiwon. According to Imperial records, she was a simple engineer who worked on farming equipment and water purification systems. The truth was far more frightening. This individual has designed standardized ship components that can be manufactured on any human world and assembled elsewhere, Mordak continued. A colony that appears to be growing wheat might actually be producing quantum processors. A mining world that seems to extract basic metals might be creating advanced armor plating. The humans have turned deception into an art form. Fleet Admiral Kaxavol, commander of the Empire's largest military force, rose from his seat near the front of the chamber. His species was known for their aggressive nature and military prowess, but even he looked shaken by what he was hearing. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the hall. Mordak's tentacles drooped with exhaustion and fear. "Based on our analysis of resource allocation, manufacturing capacity, and energy consumption patterns, we estimate that the humans have completed at least 12 supercarriers of the same class as the Defiance." Each one carries enough firepower to destroy an entire Imperial battle group. The silence that followed was deafening. 12 ships like the one that had humiliated Admiral Vextar's fleet meant that humanity possessed military power rivaling the Empire itself. But the worst news was yet to come. Our intelligence suggests that more ships are under construction, Mordak added quietly. The humans have been building their fleet for 50 years, and they show no signs of stopping. We may be looking at the end of Imperial dominance in this galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the Empire faced an enemy they couldn't simply overwhelm with superior numbers. The day that changed galactic history forever began like any other morning across human space. On dozens of worlds, people went about, their daily routines, farming, mining, teaching their children, and building their communities. But beneath the surface of this peaceful existence, something extraordinary was about to happen. At exactly noon, Galactic Standard Time, the sky above New Shanghai began to change. Massive clouds that had hung over the industrial world for weeks suddenly started swirling and moving apart, as if pushed aside by an invisible giant hand. Then, rising through the gap in the clouds like a metal mountain coming to life, the TCS, Liberation, emerged into open space. The Supercarrier was identical in size and design to the Defiance that had shocked the Empire at Haven's Rest. Its 15-kilometer hull gleamed in the light of New Shanghai's twin suns, while fighter craft poured from its hangar bays like schools of silverfish. The people on the planet's surface stopped what they were doing and stared upward in wonder, many of them seeing their world's greatest secret revealed for the first time. But New Shanghai wasn't alone. At the same moment, similar scenes were playing out across human space. On the ice world of Arctura's colony, the TCS Indomitable broke through frozen mountain ranges where it had been hidden for decades. On the desert planet of New Sahara, the TCS Unconquerable rose from beneath, vast sand dunes that had concealed its construction. One by one, across dozens of star systems, humanity's ghost fleet revealed itself to a galaxy that had never suspected its existence. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, equipped with the same quantum-locked armor and impossible weapons that had made the Defiance legendary. But they weren't just individual warships. They were part of a coordinated network that had been planned and built over generations. In the command center of the Defiance, Captain Yu Jin sat before a holographic display that showed the faces of her fellow ship commanders. These men and women represented the cream of humanity's military leadership, officers who had trained in secret for decades, while the galaxy believed humans were nothing more than farmers and miners. Admiral Song Kyung-ho, commander of the Liberation, spoke with the calm authority of someone who held the power to reshape the galaxy. The moment we've been preparing for has finally arrived. The Empire now knows that we're not the helpless colonists they thought we were. They have a choice to make. Captain Park Dong-min of the Indomitable nodded agreement. Our intelligence networks report panic in the Imperial capital. Their Senate is in emergency session, trying to decide whether to negotiate with us or attack us. Let them debate, said Admiral Song. The Empire can accept that we are their equals, or they can test whether their entire fleet can succeed, where Admiral Vextar's battle group failed so miserably. Meanwhile, in the Imperial capital, the Senate chamber buzzed with frantic activity. Representatives from hundreds of alien species argued loudly about how to respond to humanity's shocking revelation. Some called for immediate war, believing that the Empire's vast fleets could still overwhelm the human supercarriers through sheer numbers. Others urged caution, pointing out that the humans had already demonstrated technological superiority that made the outcome of any conflict uncertain. Emperor Zalneth himself sat on his crystalline throne, listening to the debates with growing unease. For 3 centuries, his family had ruled the galaxy through superior military might. The idea that a species of primitive colonists could challenge that supremacy was almost impossible to accept. But the evidence was undeniable. Across the galaxy, news networks were broadcasting images of the human supercarriers, their massive hulls bristling with weapons that Imperial scientists still couldn't fully understand. Each ship represented technological advancement that the Empire had thought impossible. As the debate raged in the Senate, President Lee Yun-kyung of the Terran Colonial Federation stepped onto the bridge of the Defiance to address the galaxy. Her words were transmitted simultaneously by every major news network in known space, reaching billions of beings across thousands of worlds. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice calm but filled with determination. "For too long, humanity has bowed before those who claimed superiority through force alone. We have been told that we were weak, that we needed protection, that we should be grateful for the Empire's benevolent rule." She paused, gesturing toward the view screen that showed the human fleet taking defensive positions along the borders of their territory. "That age is now over. We offer friendship and cooperation to those who treat us as equals, but to those who would see us return to chains, we offer only swift and certain destruction. The galaxy would never be the same."